accessing our industry stats into the future. I was able to bring together a great group of panelists here to be able to talk about this on different levels. And I'll start by introducing Pat Cummings, also the Executive Director of the Thoroughbred Idea Foundation, but Pat, a former executive with the Hong Kong Jockey Club and their racing and technology data provider. He joined the TIF, as I mentioned, as Executive Director after a 3-year stint with the Hong Kong Jockey Club's Racing Public Affairs Division, and he has a wealth of international racing experience. Papo Morales is a simulcast director and program coordinator for AmWest Wager and Entertainment. He's an avid thoroughbred racing fan, and he graduated with a business management degree from the University of Tampa, so I'm sure he's going to their alma mater dinner tonight. And he holds an equine business degree from the University of Louisville. Next is Wilson Shirley. I just told a little funny story right before lunch. Wilson's an independent consultant for more than 30 years, and he's probably been contacted about that much in the 4 years that I've been in this position. I have 5 people on my speed dial. My wife, my son, my daughter, Jenny Reese, and Wilson Shirley. So Wilson, gratefully for me, has always been there to answer questions, help me through the industry side of it, and gained a wealth of knowledge and understanding of the Interstate Horse Racing Act. But he's been advising breeders, associations, horsemen's groups, racing associations, and others in matters pertaining to ADW, simulcasting, legislative analysis, pari-mutuel revenue distributions, and race meetings. So with that, I'll turn it over to our moderator, a man that I don't think needs much introduction, my friend Steve Byk, who began hosting At the Races in 2007. At the Races is the Thoroughbred Racing's only daily news talk show, and features a roster of leading voices in the game from virtually every perspective. So with that, I'll turn it over to Steve.
Thank you. Eric, thanks so much, and I hope everybody had a pleasant morning. I heard things were terrific. We'll try to keep that momentum going on a topic that is really tough to get a handle on and cumbersome. It's been kicked around quite a bit the last several years, and with the growing interest in baseball, they called it sabermetrics. The Bill James era that started in the 70s, the analytics that has grown into really an industry of its own and a study of its own. And what business, what sport is more statistic based and data driven than ours? And where we are as an industry and where horsemen are in understanding where your statistics that you generate and the owners generate and the bettors generate, understanding where it is, who has control over it, and how it's being disseminated is really at a crucial juncture. With the sports betting specter out there, and with the ease of whether it's tout services or whether it's interpretive data analysis businesses that'll be servicing the sports bettor, they've got reams, decades, century of information that is being sent out and is going to be available certainly cheaper than the way our information is currently packaged and disseminated, and actually kind of guarded by Equibase and the Jockey Club. That's not to make them a villain in this. Things evolved the way they did, but now we have to ask questions to figure out where we need to be and what has to happen for us to move that needle to put the kind of data out there that interested horse players will use and will figure out how to use. And with that as an introduction, I'll turn to Papo first, and we'll get everybody's initial thoughts about where the data discussion is and where it could go. And you know, Papo, as a merchandiser of Signal and having a client base that can utilize information, a lot of ADWs are basically giving players free past performances, so there's a big percentage of player out there that isn't paying anything for some of this information. But explain and give us a feel for, you know, where you are and where your business is on this question.
Steve, good way to get the conversation started. First and foremost, I mean, not only do I work for an ADW, but I'm also a pretty, I mean, not a huge horse player, but a decent enough horse player. A large percentage of my salary does go through the windows. Positively, hopefully more, you know, 9 times out of 10. But data, so to get this discussion started on data, raw data, a statistic, you can't copyright that. Major League Baseball tried to do it a couple of years ago when the fantasy gaming company started putting statistics out on baseball. Major League Baseball tried to sue them and they lost in court. You cannot put a copyright on data. Now, the people that collect it are doing the work. So yes, they should get paid for collecting the data. But the raw data itself, you know, I think in a perfect world it would be an open market where innovative companies like the company that I work for, or anybody, the end user, anybody sitting out here in this crowd could gather that raw data. They could use it however they wanted to do. They could add their own analytics. And if they decided to sell that information, then yes, you have to give kicked back to the people that originally collected the raw data. But I think there's a big barrier, and I got into this just because I love horses. I started riding when I was 9, and then it just like grew up with me. From riding, I started educating myself on gambling. I don't have anybody in my family that's a gambler. I read all Steve Chris books. I just learned it on my own. But one of the biggest hurdles when I'm trying to get my friends involved is you have to pay for the basic information to make an educated wager. I think the basic information, a basic raw, you know, PPs, where the horse finished. I'm not talking about speed figures necessarily, but the raw data should be, if not free, then available at minimal cost, cents actually. And I think going from there, then if you want to upgrade, you want to get bridge, you want to pay for Thorograph, you know, then you're going to have to pay for a premium product. But if we're trying to grow this sport, and you're going to tell somebody they need to go buy PVs, they're going to have to spend $6 or $7 before they get to the track, and then when they open the PVs, it's you know, it's like showing a roadmap to a 7-year-old. They don't know what they're looking at either. So I think through innovation, if you allow companies or you know, freelance individuals to access the information, then who knows, 10 or 12 years from now, maybe 5 or 6 years, you could have a different style of PP that would actually appeal to the masses, and not just the core group of horse players who we need. I mean, we need our core group of horse players, but we also need to grow the game. And if you want to appeal to 20-year-olds, analytic guys like me that come from a commercial lending background, like I love numbers, there's got to be a different, you know, we can talk, that's a whole separate conversation, but there's got to be a different way to show those raw statistics.
Pat, Thoroughbred Idea Foundation issued just on Monday a new white paper that focused on the topic of data and its retention and the protective nature of Equibase and the way they have approached it since the inception. Provide a snapshot for everybody of where that current status is and what you perceive, and certainly your Hong Kong experience, given what is available on the HKJC website for free to any horse player, is just a profound and voluminous set of statistics and second generation statistics. But give everybody the executive summary, sure, at the least, of what is in your mind on this.
So, thanks, Steve. As was alluded to in the earlier panel, and now, we issued a white paper on Monday. The title was Embracing a Future with Free Racing Data. And the four main recommendations that came out of that were that Equibase should offer free raw data feeds. And if you don't know what a raw data feed is, it takes all of that information that is bundled in the final product you see in a past performance, but it's basically just a raw file that someone with some tech savvy can then parse and use that information to make all sorts of greater analysis. That's the very high level. We also suggested that they offer free basic past performances, as Papo alluded to, not with speed figures, not with sheets, just the basics, the box score, but to give people that opportunity. A purchase of a past performance product does not mean that person's going to wager. So we put up a barrier to entry to wager, whether you're at home, whether you are at the track, that if you want to become more informed, you have to pay to become more informed. And we say, release those shackles and turn that into a marketing expense. And we also suggested that Equibase and frankly other industry organizations partner with universities and put the modern analytical processing power to work on the data. And we also argue that racing data has more value than a lot of other sports. And we don't always think about this. Think about baseball, think about football. That they are operating, the people that are pulling in that data are working for a team or a league. In racing, every piece of data that we have also comes with a financial market. It comes with the public's assessment of that particular day in terms of odds, pool sizes. To me and to the analytics generation, that basically doubles the value of racing's information. It makes it far more compelling to want to get into it. Our recommendations were based on the history of where Equibase was. Equibase was an absolute necessity when it was founded, and it's still a necessity today. It's great to have an official data provider, but there was a massive concern that the daily racing form, which had changed hands multiple times, was eventually going to give up the game, and that racing needed to have its own source of official information. Well, that box has been checked, and a job very well done since then. What has changed is the market. From 1990 until now, if you go back and you look at the early statements in the founding of Equibase, the story was this was about educating fans better, allowing the bettor to make more educated decisions. Now, the bettors are far fewer, and yet the analytical processing power of the potential customer is far greater. And I will offer you just one anecdote at this point. I know a group that's a professional betting syndicate that does have access to the data. And they went through the data. I've actually told this story, I think, on air with you, Steve. They went through all of the data looking to try and find where a chart caller used the word prevailed. Now just think about what is happening in this example. They are looking for the use of a single word in 40,000 races a year. That's 400,000 opportunities. It was more than that, in fact, over a 10-year period. And they were looking to see what happened to horses in their next start when the use of the word prevailed appeared in a comment. Because they believed, this team believed that that word was indicative of a fully exerted performance by the horse. That if the chart caller decided to go that deep and to use that word, that it was a headlong stretch duel and the horse just nailed it on the line, all out. And then they wanted to see how they could then affect their betting model, their algorithms for horses that were coming back off of a start where the term prevailed was used. Now, this is a group that is already in the market, that is already participating, that is putting the data to work for them. What if this was available to all of the quantitative analysts that are out there, to all of the universities? I just spent 2 weeks ago, I was at the Sloan MIT conference in Boston where 3,500 people got together. to talk about sports analytics, and they talked about baseball and football and basketball. They talked about curling analytics and poker analytics. We've got a great game. We've got a lot of data. And to make it a little bit better, to encourage an inspiration in the market and in the analysis, our organization, and I think a lot of people in the sport, want greater participation. And we think that a great way to do that is to offer that data, as Papo said, free or at a very, very reduced price point to engage that community.
On that topic, and as part of a conversation I had with Wilson, there was a panelist that we had hoped that would join us today by the name of Robin Howlett. And Robin, is anybody who's familiar with the name and his experience of what happened last year? So you were right. Wilson didn't think that this was going to be widely known. Robin Howlett is a software developer, software engineer, and he went into the charts for 10 years and created one of the analytic models that Pat is referring to, and created not a product, I don't want to call it product because he wasn't looking to sell it. He was using what they call the open source methodology to allow people to utilize his algorithms and mine their own data, just what Pat and TIF were suggesting. And he put a cute name on it called Handy Capper. And he played around with it for several months after refining it, and he put close to 3 years of work into it. And then he more or less opened it up to a handful of people, and you know, there's a coterie of Twitter-based horse players and fans of the game that are very in tune on this topic, and they've been kind of leading edge on this in the Twitter era. And they used it, they were having fun with it, and then of course, the Jockey Club got wind of it and immediately sent Robin Howlett a polite cease and desist. They didn't go to him and say, you know, maybe there's something we can do together. They told him, you're infringing on our material and without authorization. And I mean, they weren't particularly heavy-handed about it, but enough so that when we wanted Robin to come here and talk about his experience, he said he's basically so put off by what transpired, he really didn't see any, he thinks maybe he'll come back to it in the future, but he was really not in the mind and you know, feeling like he's got anything to tell the industry that was really unwelcoming to what on his part was altruistic and was basically designed to help people enjoy the game more and understand it better. And you would think that formula, helping people understand the game and make better bets and you know, what better way is there to enjoy the game than cashing tickets? If the Jockey Club feels that that's an infringement on their mission, then they're really out of whack with the realities. And this is just, as I want to turn it over to Wilson, but this is a real problem at Arizona, Pat. We had the same discussion, and I tried to basically summarize it by saying, is this the message that we want to send as an industry, that inquisitive people like this, that we don't want them interested in our sport, in our gambling product? It's a terrible message, number one, and it's a message we've been sending now in this era, the sabermetric era, for 15 plus years. And Wilson, you've had experience in so many arenas in the sport. Your thoughts about how we can unlock the door, if that's an appropriate suggestion about what we can do as an industry to facilitate getting to the statistics that our owners and our horsemen are generating.
Thank you, Steve. With respect to the background of this, I think it's it's an ironic note, but interesting, I think, the sabermetric, Bill James sabermetric revolution took place in the 70s. And it was made possible because the Alliance Sports Bureau, which was the official database of Major League Baseball, had a limited set of data collection. And the sabermetricians who were interested in things like on-base percentage actually sent people into the press boxes who charted every pitch. Every pitch location, what type of pitch it was, where it went. They amassed a whole lot more data than Alliance Sports Bureau, the Major League Baseball's official data base. And the data that these sabermetricians collected became Stats Incorporated, which is now, I believe, a partner of Equibase. But it was the accumulation of additional data over and above what was the current norm that allowed this boom in baseball statistics and in baseball interest. And what Equibase did when it was founded is it put separate chart callers in the press box with the daily racing form chart callers. They had a separate data collection network. And then ultimately, when it was obvious that they were just duplicating each other's work, that they made a deal, they merged, or they bought out the daily racing forums archives and took over that function. But if you think about the data that is available to us, I think you need to think ahead. What we have now is a collection of points of data drawn from people observing videotapes of races and identifying the distances between horses as points of call, and timing the leading horse. What was the time of the race of the leading horses? So we have discrete packets at the 16th pole or at the 8th pole at the finish line. That's not what's going to happen. Those days are over. Over the next 5 to 10 years, it's inevitable that the collection of racing data is going to be automated, and it's going to be, I don't know exactly what it's going to be, but it may very well be something like the kind of video processing that you see now on NFL broadcasts, where they show a play and then they rotate the whole play around in a circle, because the graphics processing can manipulate all that. So it's going to be like the cameras that are on self-driving cars that have to process, trillions of terabytes of information every second to stop wrecks, to prevent wrecks. That's what's going to be happening. That's what's going to happen in the charting of races if we're going to be able to compete with professional sports that are going to be utilizing these new digital processing tools to deliver their sport to customers, combined with statistical readouts on a real-time basis, which is, they're going to be doing that, and you're going to be looking at the football game on your phone, because in 10 years, there'll be 5G networks everywhere. So the amount of product that's going to be delivered to people's devices that every major sport is going to capitalize on and take advantage of is going to mean that we are going to have to develop statistical and tracking products if we're going to be in the same ballpark as other sports. So the days of amassing this sort of mosaic of discrete bits of wagering information that make up the chart, those days are going to be over. What they're going to be tracking the continuous performance, the continuous movement of every single horse in the race. This is a fundamentally different data collection proposition that chart callers are. The chart callers are looking at the race and the position of the horse in the race. What's going to be happening here is every single horse will be tracked individually in one continuous stream, and you're going to be able to say, what's the stride length of this horse? You're going to be saying, is this horse accelerating now? What is the average rate of speed of this horse over any distance of ground during the race? That the data will have all that in you. And it's going to be a real task, I should think, to be able to transition the standard chart into, or to utilize the new data stream and package it in a way that is recognizable to horse players. But it's going to be, it's a great challenge and a great opportunity for developing data as a way to deliver the sport to the public.
And that, when you say that, it does a tiered layer of standard, premium, and super premium statistic. That might be the angle, Pat. Is that potential? Is that a way to go to Equibase and say to them, why don't you make it a Chinese menu, but column A is the basic introductory information, then there's the next tier, and then there's Wilson's next level, third generation stats.
I think by offering the initial information in a raw format to the marketplace will inspire the innovation and hopefully in the quickest way possible to get to Wilson's future model. That this will, it was with the sabermetrics era. Once that became digital, the speed with which everything happened to create new statistics for which baseball is now analyzed, it's exponentially increased. I think the same thing would happen in racing. That by opening the doors of that raw information of what we have now, the marketplace would look at that and say, okay, I've got this, now how can I make this better? How can I make this modern? How can I create something that is going to revolutionize that? It becomes a product which I think you can build off of. We've got this 3-decade foundation of the data, but the next steps will come, and they will come much quicker than they've ever come before. Now look, I know that Equibase has done some good work with Trackits in the past. I was involved with some of that for a few years. They've done some of their own tracking. And there are a lot of issues to the live tracking of races with live data and turning information around in a live setting. And there's value to that, particularly in the broadcast. But on the back end, for data collection purposes, where you don't need that absolute automated real-time response, but you're just in collection mode, the possibilities, as Wilson suggests, are there in other sports. They're being used more than they ever have before. We want to play this game. We want to be a part of this market. And if we are a part of this market, and the quicker we become part of it, I think there's a direct relationship to better participation, to wagering.
And it's funny, on that topic, when I've been asked over the past, now it's close to a year when the Supreme Court decision came through on sports betting, and we had been tracking it, particularly with Dennis Drazen, for the whole 7 years. And every time Drazen lost in court, I'd have him on the radio, and we'd say, Dennis, what's going to happen next? Well, this is the next level. And you're still confident? Yes, we're going to get to the Supreme Court. We're going to win on this basis, and he was right. The interesting portion of that, to me, is that there's all these people that have been pent up demand to bet sports, and they think it's going to be easy. Oh, I'm right all the time. I get I get Marymount +5. I'll nail. Oh, I'm going to go on. I'm going to be the next. I'm the next. Jimmy the Great. They're going to find out that it's not easy to win, and at that point, I think racing's got to be in the position to say, "Come look over here," because you're just like we tried to explain to casino bettors and other bettors of that ilk, that this is a game you can win because you're betting against the opinions of others. You're not, and yes, there is a house rake, obviously, and that's a separate topic to address, but you've got a fighting chance in our game as a bettor. So if they're already predisposed to the kind of information that they're enjoying right now, and they haven't even had a chance to bet, they've only been playing, fantasy sports and, a little bit of the DFS here and there, etc. And, the ones that have access to Vegas and so forth and parlay cards, they've been playing. But if we're in a position to provide them with the kind of information that's going to make it easier to approach the game. I mean, let's face it. I mean, we've got the most complex wagering equations of any betting game. It's very complex. We've got more moving parts than anything. There's nothing else like horse racing. And even in that arena, and Wilson, this is something you can address too because you've seen it. And Pat, I know it's a pet peeve of yours. The fact that there's some things that we're not even doing well enough going into this, between confusion over run-ups, the about distances. It's 2019. Why are we running about distances at this point? The inability of using teletimers that haven't changed since the 50s. I mean, there's some things that we've got to take care of in a rank hurry to even get on a level playing field to get to the next generation statistical discussion.
I presented this number in December when Belmont had run a race at 1 mile and 5/8 in October or something, and they set a new course record. And the old course record holder was Man of War. So that record stood for a long time. And I went back and I found in the old DRF archives, which are great if you haven't looked at them through the University of Kentucky, they're fantastic. A lot of fun to go back and look at them. But they had 1.5 mile sectional time in 1920 in the chart for that race. So 90 years ago, they told you what the 1.5 mile time was. In 2018, they didn't have the 1.5 mile split in this race that was run. It was an overnight stake at the Temperance Hill, I think, or something like that at Belmont. They didn't have the 1.5 mile sectional time. That's a problem. So something else I've talked about with Steve before, which just boggles my mind, and horsemen in particular have to be very concerned about this. When they put in the condition book, the race is at 1 mile and 3/8, and they don't start the clock for the first 10 seconds of the race, and they time the last 1 mile and 3/8. Your horse didn't run 1 mile and 3/8. That race wasn't 1 mile and 3/8. The timed portion was 1 mile and 3/8. But they ran a grade 2 at Saratoga this summer that was probably closer to 1 mile and 7/16 with about 100 foot of run. That's bad for everybody. It's bad for the bettors, it's bad for the trainers, the owners, the people who thought they had a horse that could maybe stretch from 1.25 miles to 1 mile and 3/8. Maybe we're going to take a chance today. And you find out that the race is at least 1/16 of a mile longer, almost a full furlong longer. So it's that sort of element that I think is part and parcel of this entire discussion, that it is not just about opening the data, making it more available. It's about innovating with it in a timely fashion that people can use in a modern way letting the market, letting the free market dictate what's best for the bettors and the customers and the owners and the trainers and the people who are using that information to make decisions about where I place my horse or how I bet on my horse.
Papo, I'm curious, what does AmWager provide your subscribers, the users?
Well,
free goods.
I mean, I encourage everybody to check it out. So I'm not, just up here talking about it. But I've used all the major platforms, ADW platforms. Some of them I have to use for content reasons, which is all another discussion. The content's denied. But what we've tried to do, and what Nelson Clemens, my boss, did was when he built the platform, it was actually built by a group of players, some very prominent players. I don't want to name drop here, but I'm sure everybody here on this panel is familiar with them. We took their ideas, what they wanted to see in a wager pad, and through technology. I mean, that's how the platform was born. And if you pull up our platform and you pull up other platforms, it's night and day. I mean, we're taking some of the tools that are available to the high volume players, whether it's file uploads, Dutch wagering, which is constantly adjusting your bets based on what the current odds are. We're trying to give the everyday player, you, me, anybody out there, the same tools and the same technology that the professional guys that are betting tens of millions of dollars are using and developed on their own.
And I'll add to that, Steve. I think in a marketplace where we value more people getting more information and greater participation, that those customers who are going to become attracted to racing, the stats hounds, the data geeks, those are people we want in our markets, that we want participating. They will demand innovations like the ones that AmWager has in place, and only a few other ADWs that maybe are scratching the surface, but that mass market has not adapted to that sort of platform yet, and hopefully, if we can kind of join the era of analytics, join this modern data quest that all of our other sports are engaging in, certainly those ones that are going to be legal for wagering in many states. I know that the conversation earlier, someone referenced 20 states. I think it's more than that. A lot of people in Vegas very comfortably think it's 30 in 3 years, and that becomes essentially a really big snowball rolling downhill with some of the other states that currently are very conservative in that approach to liberalize over time. Those types of customers do not want the very basic ADW setup. They want all the bells and whistles. They want that full market approach, and there's very few entities that are giving it to them right now, and I'd say AmWager certainly one.
Wilson, and I don't think any of us are so old that we were there when this discussion started. But how much, from your understanding, how much discussion was there at the time when Equibase was established as to who really had the right, who owned these statistics per se? If the trainers are training the horses, the owners are paying for their upkeep, the racetrack is providing the bricks and mortar to run the races, the states are the management, the jurisdictional supervision, and then there's this entity over on the side that now owns everything and controls it. How did that come about, and why, and has there ever been? I know that Ed Bain fought almost his entire life against this, and lost repeatedly every time he tried in a Don Quixote-esque manner. But from your understanding, what's the background on that discussion?
Steve, I don't know what the background on that is. When Equibase was formed, I don't remember. I was in California at the time, working for the California Horsemen. I don't remember any discussion whatsoever with the horsemen's groups. They certainly had discussions with the tracks. But I think that there's a difference between having chart callers reviewing videotapes of races and writing stuff down, and the automated tracking, digital tracking of every horse in the race. The difference is that the chart caller is giving a picture of the race as a whole with specific points in between. What's happening now is going to be that the performance of each individual horse is going to be tracked. So the question arises, who has the right to that performance data? Or rather, more specifically, does the owner of that racehorse have any proprietary right in the record of his horse's performance in the race? I think the answer is absolutely he does.
I would agree.
Now, most horsemen's groups have agreements with their tracks with respect to media rights that acknowledge that the owners of the horses have a right to the image of their horses. I don't know that there are any horsemen's groups that have an agreement with their tracks with respect to digital rights. That is, and if the individual owner has a right in the record of his horse's performance, what can he do about it? How does he exercise that right? How does he claim it? He can't. Only the horsemen's organizations can assert those rights and claim those rights on behalf of their members. Nobody else is going to do that. So if the horsemen's groups can say to their tracks, you're going to have an agreement with us if you are going to allow a data collection service to track our horses. Or the horsemen's groups could go to the data collection service and say, you have to have an agreement with us if you're going to collect the individual performance data of our members' property. These are questions that you people have to ask now. Because if you don't, 5 years from now, these systems will be up and running, and and whatever claim to the property rights of horse owners in this matter, they'll be gone. They'll have lost them. You have to try to address these issues now before the system's in place.
Steve, I'm Judgment Swain. I practiced law for 24 years with Don Sturgill, who was general counsel back in the day for National HBPA, back in the days when the Equibase was getting started up. He and I had many discussions in those time periods as to who owns the rights and the data, whether there was any way to stop Equibase from taking this without asserting certain kinds of proprietary rights that Wilson is speaking about. And ultimately, we determined the only thing that we would have would be publicity rights, which entails really more than just data. The law has progressed since that time period. Mr. Morales, is it? I think is correct. Since the days that we first analyzed those issues back in the 90s, the law has become pretty clear in other sports that data per se is not capable of being owned if it's collected and done individually. And that stated, that doesn't mean that your point, Wilson, that horsemen, to the extent you're dealing with the track, and the track is permitting that kind of data to be collected, that you can't collectively negotiate about it and assert a proprietary interest through the contracting process. But when third parties are coming in, or if it's being collected through satellite or other kinds of way, it's just pure data. You don't really have a contractual relationship with third parties collecting the data. So under those data laws, cases that have come down that Mr. Morales is talking about, it's going to have a hard time asserting and making them treat that data as belonging to the horses. But at least to the extent that the tracks are participating in the process, it needs to be asserted collectively through that contracting process.
Well, I'm not sure if the video processing as a means of collecting data is any different than the kind of if the owner's rights with respect to that property is any different than the owner's rights with respect to the use of the videotape for publicity purposes or any other purpose. These are questions that you all need to ask. Does a baseball player have, in his agreement with Major League Baseball, is there any recognition of the player's interest in the statistics that Major League Baseball is collecting and disseminating to market the sport?
That'd be in their collective, that's gotta be in their collective bargaining agreement.
Right.
With their images on Topps cards and all that stuff.
Exactly. Right. Same with football. Same with, why should horse racing be any different? The owners of the racehorses own the property. They own the talent.
Wilson, don't you think that by me entering my horse in a public race in Oakmont Park, that there's at least a legal question on whether or not I waive the right to the ownership of that type of information?
I think that's precisely a matter of your contract with Oakmont Park.
I think it's more of a legal question than it is a matter of contractual.
Is that, you think it's a condition?
I was gonna say.
Of a condition established by the.
I think the question is, Oakmont says, no, you don't have any right there. You waived it when you entered that race, that anybody could have collected that data when you ran that race, and you waived whatever rights you had. I think that's a serious point that you're gonna have to argue when you start fighting that battle.
You're gonna have to argue it.
Well,
It's the horse who's
I'm
on.
not all that convinced that I'm right.
But if there are proprietary rights if an individual owner has a proprietary right in the performance of his horse and the record of that performance, the coverage of that, then it's up to you all to assert those rights. It's up to you all to guarantee and protect the individual rights of the owners.
But the most important word you said was if. And
You
that's
got-
what it's never been determined whether or not we have any right, Doug?
Well, you're both right. And to the extent that it's a claim to a proprietary right and it gets bound up into a contractual protection with your racetrack, it becomes proprietary in that contract. But in absence of the contract, and if you don't have an established proprietary claim, all it is a claim, and if you sue on it, as has been happening in other sports, the data per se is, like you're saying, waived, and the person who collected it, it's in the public domain, and you can't claim ownership in data that was collected by somebody else. We still have a claim, though, and we have a claim as horsemen, and the only way to put flesh and bone on that claim is to bind it into contracts with the racetracks, or whoever's collecting the data. But the problem is that we don't have contracts always with whoever's collecting it. We certainly have it with the tracks.
Doug, does any HBPA have that contract with any track?
They come, I don't know, I'm not aware of anybody actually having that in their contract on data, per se. I am aware of several horsemen's groups that have got media rights clauses. And if you've got the media rights, you're one step away from going on to the next level. You ought to move that way. You ought to think in terms of talking about it with your track on the media rights and then data rights.
And Pat, I want to fold you in with your Trackus experience here, and frankly, Trackus kind of came off the tracks when you left. Is there potential for an aggressive jurisdiction, let's say NYRA, to put in a next generation tracking system along this line, collect their own data, and provide that avenue in an area that's unrelated currently to Equibase, that they could then give to NYRA Bet's customers for a marketing advantage, and give to whether it's a team in-house or whether they offer it out to people to play with.
While we exist in a world on this continent with data and its pricing the way it is, weaponizing it for the positive in some capacity would certainly be an option, I'd say, without question. Now, trackers provide certain benefits to the race viewing experience. I'd say I was probably ahead of the curve in doing some of the things with the data that I did, and that didn't get carried on with, and that's unfortunate. But for a jurisdiction, I think NYRA would be a very good example of one. I think Woodbine would be another example of one. Woodbine in particular, a very insulated market, but frankly, Southern California, they're kind of out there on an island. I think those sorts of jurisdictions, because data in itself isn't valuable until you have more of it on the same horses. So in a singular, in an island-like jurisdiction, I think it becomes